Skidamarinky dinky dink, skidamarinky doo. I love you, my legions. Look at them, huh? That's the Oklahoma Legion. Getting to work. Look how sexy they are. You have entered the realm of Emperor Bogustus of the Bowman Empire. And we got some Valandia boys that showed up in my territory thinking they wanted a little bit of it. And now they're going to get the good news. Hey, stop watching the battle and take a good look at my guy, huh? You see the jeweled hat on the armored horse? Look at it from the side here. With the gloves. Look, on the other side, look at my sword. See how it's got gold too and jewels on that? Yeah. It clips a little, but what do I tell you? If it don't clip, it don't drip. Any day, ladies. Let's wrap this up. I got a guide to get to. Oh, there we go. Good job, boys. Your Emperor's proud of you. First up, cultural bonuses. 20% less garrison troop wage. This is a fantastic bonus. Very thematic because it's all about stacking your fiefs full of troops. And it really plays into that defensive fortifications kind of play that the Empire's known for. You can further reduce this down with a governor. There are perks that reduce garrison troop wage. On top of that, in Empire castles, there's a building you can build that gives you another 30%. So a 50% less garrison troop wage is going to allow you to fill those things up with a bunch of troops. And this will allow you to defend your fiefs much more efficiently than other factions. This top one is a very nice bonus, especially as your fief collection starts adding up and you've got more and more garrisons. 20% off the total cost is crazy good. You throw in some governor perks and some building perks on top of it, and it's ridiculous how big your garrisons can be for how cheap you can make them. It's really a very powerful bonus. And again, it really fits that Empire theme of playing very defensively and fortified. 25% more influence for being in an army. You spend influence to build an army, take a fief, whatever. You go fight a big battle, you get 25% more of that influence back. This one isn't that great in my opinion. Influence is very easy to get. I don't ever feel like I'm struggling for influence. It is a currency that you need, and whatever, you get 25% more return on your investment. Never a bad thing, but I don't find this one to be particularly strong. Village Hearths increased 20% less. If you look at a village in the game, you'll see that it has a hearth growth rate. And you'll see on your Empire villages a negative growth penalty. There are ways to counter this. You can run the irrigation edict and it will counter this and your hearths will grow. But ultimately what village hearth growth is, the more a village flourishes, the more hearths it will have. As your hearths build up and your villages get bigger, they have more militia, they carry more stuff, you'll get better troops from them. So having a high hearth rate is good. Again, there are ways to counter this, both governor perks and edicts that will help increase your hearth growth. So not a huge problem to deal with, but this is actually when you compare the negatives of other factions, this one clips a little bit. But eventually you're going to have your towns all the way built up and you can just run the irrigation edict. And honestly, 20% isn't the end of the world. The greatest cultural bonus the Empire actually has isn't listed there, but when you scroll around the map and you look from Epicrotia all the way down here to Ortesia, all the way over here to Danustica, and all the way up to Imprella. All of this is full of Empire troops. So it doesn't matter if you're fighting over here in the west, the north, the east, or the south. You can always fall back to the center, grab some troops to refill your legion, and get back to tearing stuff up. There are Empire troops widely available to you at every point in the map. And it is such an amazing bonus. People don't talk about it enough and how awesome that is. One of the complaints I've heard about Empire playthroughs is that the troops are all the same and it always plays the same. And when you play the Empire, this is where I would greatly encourage you to change it up. And one of the great ways to do it is to really lean into that adaptability that the legions were known for. And so you come up here, say you're Northern Empire. Well, to me, it makes sense that the Northern Empire would gain a lot of respect for Northern troops. And maybe you'd want to really start incorporating in some Nordic troops, some two-handed guys, and you'd see a lot of value in that. Over here in the West, you can imagine that fighting these Valandians and their heavy cavalry, and more importantly, their crossbows, might really leave an imprint on you. And so maybe you want to transition your ranged troops to be mostly crossbows because you really see the power of that new technology come to life when you're fighting them. So now you've got this kind of, you modernize the legions with this new crossbow technology. Maybe fighting these southern desert tribes makes you appreciate the javelin clav. You start mixing in some of those with your cataphracts. And then here in the Southern Empire, which is gone now because it's all part of my empire. But back when they were alive, you could imagine fighting all these horse archers and ranged troops would have left an impression, right? And so then you need your own horse archers. I think the Empire is one of those factions where it makes a lot of sense to grab other troops. People always will say, that's going to make them completely overpowered. But at some point, your army is overpowered, right? There's no way the player army can't be overpowered in this game. The most important thing, what do I tell you? But you don't listen to me. No, you don't. The most important thing is that you have fun and you're having a good time. Okay, and the second you're bored with one playthrough, you start another one anyway. That's the Mountain Blade cycle that we're all addicted to. And so for me, on these Empire campaigns, always feel free to throw a little spice on your legions by adding in some foreign troops. I think it makes a lot of sense. And most importantly, I think it can be a lot of fun. And here he is, the most majestic, handsome, badass, sexy, intelligent, clever, amazing emperor ever, Emperor Bogustus. Isn't he spectacular? Yes, he is. Of course you agree. And we're going to make sure that that's how it's written down, just like that. And he is just such a stud. Let's check out this gear. You already saw the awesome jeweled hat that makes you so jelly. And then look here, legendary. I haven't found the upgraded chest piece yet, but legendary gauntlets, legendary boots. We got that palmation. Awesome cataphract scale barding, 75 horse armor. He is just a tank. And then over here, we've got the jeweled sword and the legendary shield, just a little something because some people are assholes and try to hit the emperor. And so when I told you the sexiest emperor around, now you know that that's true. Emperor Bogustus is a little unhappily married here to Empress Phaia. I mean, she's a real tease, this one. And started out, popped me a male heir right away. And so it was all love and fireworks to begin with. But then, boy, we really fell apart after the first quarter here. And just failure after failure. Just unbelievable. Very disappointing performance out of her this playthrough. And, you just expect better of people. But thus is the pains of an emperor. Now, let's talk about how an emperor would be built. So first off, if you've never done a commander playthrough where you sit back and you don't get really involved in the fighting, let me give you some tips on why that's a lot of fun. First off, number one, it's going to make you better at the combat controls, right? It's going to let you fine tune any hiccups you have, get some muscle memory in commanding your troops, and it's going to be good for you. Number two, if you play with character death and companion death on, and you're true to that, and that's one of my rules. If my guy actually dies, that's end of campaign. I don't reload it, and I want to encourage you to do the same thing. So if you play that way, then sitting back a little bit's a lot safer. And the last point I'll make is, if you give your companions the skills, they often don't level up as quickly. Now, with Steward and Medicine, they tend to, but leveling your companions' engineering takes a lot longer than if you just do it yourself. I leveled this up during the mercenary phase in like 2 or 3 sieges, and I was already at max level. And one of the things I love about Bannerlord is that even if you don't max out the combat perks, it's not like when I ride by on my awesome gear, my best horse, and my awesome sword, I can't kill most troops in one shot still, even just by putting 5 focus points here. If I have to pull out my sword and help a little bit or defend myself, I'll do it, and that's how I've leveled this up. And so if you've never done it, I want to encourage you, sit back, play as a commander, encourage your guys. I like to get down off my horse after the battle's over and smack their little asses like a bongo drum because I'm so proud of them. Right? I love my pixels, and they need me to be there to guide them to victory. The main focus of my commander build is I'm grabbing all the int skills and then also charm and leadership because he's just such a dashing fellow and the men love him because he pays them and he leads them to victory. Starting down here as steward, what is the Empire and historically the legions known for? Ultimately, their logistics. Being able to quickly gear up a new legion here with the discarded weapons and armors, being able to be given as experience is huge. Helps you put out a new legion very quickly after, say, you take a fief and you dump a bunch of troops in it. Now you need to build a new one. You're going to be able to do that right away. And with this build, you're going to have a massive personal army. So having less food consumption, less wages, and all that kind of stuff really plays into that logistical precision that the legions were known for. Another way you could do this Emperor playthrough is you could hire companions to do these int skills for you and just maybe carry them around you like in their own party as your own personal bodyguards. That way they're not at risk of dying so much. I suggest that you do it once where you just do it because being able to level these right out of the gate gets them leveled very quickly. Medicine. If you don't know, which I'm sure most of you do, this is the most powerful skill in the game. Matter of fact, it's probably a little too powerful if we're being honest, but it is what it is. The higher you get this up, the less and less of your troops die. When your troops don't actually die, they just get wounded and you can just sit in a town and recover your massive army and take minimal casualties over and over again. It's a huge advantage. On top of that, when you get to the final perk, Minister of Health, where your troops get extra hit points, this is going to turn your legions into monsters. They are going to devour other armies and barely take any casualties. It doesn't make them immortal, but it makes them damn close to it. The difficulty with medicine is leveling it up, and you can watch other guides and they'll tell you to starve cities, and there's a bunch of tricks that you can do to get this up quickly. But if you just want to do it organically like I do, I don't really like to cheat the system most of the time. I mean, do what you want. But if you don't want to do all that, one key I will tell you is to make sure you grab this Doctor's Oath, because this will allow the casualties you inflict to also count towards leveling your medicine. So you'll get medicine skill when your troops go down and when the enemy troops go down. And that is a dramatic increase in how fast this skill will level, is when all the casualties count towards your XP versus just your team. Make sure you grab this Doctor's Oath. And yes, as it states there, this is going to increase your potential prisoners, which is actually really nice because when you're fighting other Empire armies, which you'll have to do a lot as the Empire, you're going to get an increase of guys that you can recruit into your own army. On top of that, you can sell a lot more prisoners and make more money. So it's really not a negative side to it. The most powerful tree in the game by far. You slap all these perks on top of your legions and you're going to have a great time seeing what they can do. Getting your engineering this high is a lot of fun because it forces huge enemy armies to hit your walls in the worst conditions. Most of the time, this forces the enemy to have to hit your fief with no siege of their own, all of your siege up and in place and ready to kill hundreds of their troops. And also remember your 20% reduction in garrison costs. So your fief's going to have more than enough troops in it. And this combination here becomes especially powerful when, say, you create your own empire and you see those massive 1,000 plus man armies headed your way to take one of your fiefs. You just highlight them, it'll tell you where they're going. Even if they try to starve out the garrison, it's not going to matter because your stacked army's going to be in there. You've got food for days. Your little personal army can just change the entire tide of wars. With this build, I'd actually go 10 in intelligence because every point in steward is an extra guy. Every point in medicine is extra health. And of course, every point in engineering is more damage from your siege engines. I maxed out the charm tree, not because it's really that great, but just because I liked it thematically. My emperor being, charming and charismatic. But it is really helpful when it comes to persuading lords to join your faction. And you can see here on my kingdom, I was actually able to get a lot of clan tier 5s to join my faction. You get 10% double persuasion chance. If you come in here to athletics, you get this imposing stature, 30% persuasion chance. And then there's extra bonuses in here for gaining more reputation. And so there's just a whole bunch of talents in here that's going to increase the amount of influence you get and the likelihood that you can convince people to do what you want. It really plays into that charismatic leader theme. But as far as its impact on the campaign, I mean, you can see here, I'm rolling in influence. So I don't know that it's that impactful. I don't know that you really need extra 5 influence per day. In the end, I think charm does have its benefits, but I don't know that it's massively needed. But it's fun just to be a charming fellow. The real great tree in social is leadership. This one right here alone, extra troop tier. When you let your villages build up and not get raided, eventually you'll be recruiting level 3 and level 4 troops right from the start. So whenever you need to rebuild your legion, you can do it very quickly. The best part about leadership is really just the extra party size. I mean, you come through here, there's extra party size. Here's extra party size for each town you control. I have 3 of them, so there's plus 15. More party size. I think up here's party size and an extra clan I can recruit to my kingdom if I want. And then final perk here, ultimate leader, plus 1 party size for each leadership above 250. So you could also throw 10 in social if you wanted to get a bigger army that way. However, I still think I would just do 10 in intelligence because your steward's going to give you plus party size going all the way up to 330. You also are going to get the benefit of being able to max out medicine and engineering, whereas if you put 10 in social, you only get the extra party size from leadership. I always do go ahead and grab roguery, mostly because with this medicine perk here, this doctor's oath, you're going to be collecting tons of prisoners. If you hop in those big sieges and defend your fiefs, you can sometimes it can be 700, 800, 1,000 prisoners that you can sell, and you're going to make a ton of money doing that. And this is just going to level naturally. Plus, that extra battle loot is really, really great. And in particular, look here at this one, this metallurgy. If you have this perk, 30% chance to remove negative modifiers on looted items. Removing those negative modifiers is amazing because it makes your loot more valuable. You'll get more money for it if it's not dented or rusted or whatever. Dude, I am rolling in what am I rolling here? Look at what I'm having to pay in tributes to keep the Khazad and the Aserai from destroying my kingdom while I focus on the Valandians right now. 15K, that's nothing. That is a breeze to pay for, and look how much money I have, 2.99 million. I mean, it's just the amount of money flowing in is crazy. I mean, it's just insane because you're going to get more of it and it's going to be higher quality with that engineering perk. One of the most common things I see when I look on the subreddit or the Tail World forums, when new players ask for advice, is that people say you need to have smithing, you need to do smithing, always do smithing on you. That is bullshit. You never need to do smithing. Now, there's nothing wrong with smithing. It could be a lot of fun if you like that playthrough and you like to build your own weapons. But the first thing is you will be able to one-shot most things in the game just by using the weapons that are already in it. There's absolutely no need at all to build a stronger weapon. If you want to do it and that's fun for you, that's fine. And yes, you can make great money smithing, but you definitely don't need to have this on a character, and it will add a lot of time to your playthrough. Now, apparently it's not as bad as it used to be. I've only leveled smithing 2 times in my thousands of hours played, but anyone suggesting to you that you have to have smithing or that it's essential is completely wrong. Okay, you will be rolling in money because once you get to fighting big battles, you're going to have more money than you know what to do with, and you're going to have to go to 6, 7 towns just to sell it all. And so what eventually happens is you just kind of pick the choice pieces out to fund your military and keep your money relatively in the same place. In this playthrough alone, each of these tier 5 clans and tier 4 clans was 600,000 to 800,000 each. I'm still sitting at a smooth 3 million. I mean, I have more loot and more money than I know what to do with. My favorite thing about smithing is it's not needed. It's there if you want it thematically, or if you really want to play that way, it's there for you, but it's not a mandatory thing. And people that talk about it or suggest that it is, I could not disagree more. So smithing is awesome. If you want to make some badass legendary weapon, I could see where that would be a lot of fun. But if you're a new player, there's already a ton of mechanics and things to learn about Bannerlord. I wouldn't overwhelm yourself with smithing on top of that. I just learn the game and learn how to do without smithing. And then when you come to learning smithing, you're going to appreciate what it adds to the game. Just my thoughts on smithing. It's awesome. It's cool, but it's most certainly not mandatory. And so this is the commander build right here. I screwed up. This should be 7 in social because 7's going to allow you to get all the way up to this 275. You don't need 8. I should have put this down in int because I'm trying to go 10 in intelligence so that we can max these 3 out. And then we grab these 2 and this roguery. And then whatever combat skills you want, feel free. And remember, don't just build your guy this way. Play your guy this way. You're a commander. You're not leading from the front in this playthrough. You're going to play sitting back. Now we're in those troop trees. How could we not start with the beautiful Legionnaire? What a stud this guy, because he's got excellent armor. One of the most important things when you talk about shielded infantry and infantry is their armor. That's where they take a lot of arrows or chops. And right here, you got that 14 with the gloves, you got 22. And up here with the shoulder harness, another 11. So very heavily armored where it matters. Leg armor doesn't really matter. Every once in a while, they might take an arrow to the knee kind of thing. But for the most part, you're really worried about body and arm armor. And these guys have a ton of it. On top of that, let's talk about equipment. We either get this fine steel sword, and look right there, 116 length. That reach allows them to be very effective with these swords, even if they're behind another Legionnaire. And you know what else this is really good for? Chopping cavalry. That extra length, you slow cavalry down in your shield wall or where they run into a big pile of Legionnaires, those guys can reach up there and whack those guys with these long swords. But even if they don't get this long sword, the other thing they can get, what's that right there? Oh, it's a Calratic mace. And why is that awesome? Because you say, well, it only does 56 swing damage. Yeah, but it's blunt damage. And blunt damage is the most effective damage against what? Other armor. These guys are not only heavily armored, they're amazing at taking out other heavily armored troops. And that is a unique specialty. And on top of either getting an amazingly long, effective sword or a mace that's great for taking out armored opponents, they also come with this pilum polearm that helps them fighting cavalry as well. The frustrating thing about this is that they used to throw these. This used to be a very powerful throwing weapon that the whole Legion, everybody got one throw of these things and it was awesome. And now they stopped that. And I don't know why they did, because that's historically, I think, what it was. There's a mod that you can get to make this throwable again. And it might be something you're interested in, but it's kind of awkward at where it's at right now. I mean, it's actually pretty effective for a polearm just because it's not that long. And so they seem to be able to use it pretty well against cavalry. I mean, as great as the AI can, but overall, it's just, I really wish they'd make it throwable again. But awkwardness of the pilum aside, when it comes to the Legionnaire, you have a heavily armored, well-shielded infantryman who has outstanding weapon choices, especially when it comes to taking out other infantry. You can see they've got this 130 one-handed, 130 polearm, 130 athletics. You throw a captain in on top of these guys, give them some move speed and some charge damage defense. and increase their hit points through the medicine tree. And this guy does it all. He can take out other infantry, other cavalry. You can confidently forge your empire on the backs of these legionnaires. They do not disappoint. Love them so much, and they just look badass. This elite Manavliatin, he is such a stud because whereas your legionnaires up there creating your shield wall, being tanky, this guy comes in with a two-handed polearm, the Manavlian, 163 length. You couple that length with 130 in polearm skill, and these guys do a great job of particularly taking out the cavalry that runs into your infantry lines. But even much like the two-handed units in other armies, these guys will swing around the flanks or up the middle, kind of behind the shielded guys, and swing these pole arms and really get to taking out a lot of enemies. They're very, very good additions to the Legion and give that infantry line a little better killing power, especially in regards to cavalry. Now, of course, with most two-handed troops, you do run into this situation where their armor is pretty dramatically reduced, although look at that armor there, pretty good. And so these actually I find to be one of the tankier two-handed troops. He has this polearm weapon, but he also gets this polearm pilum. Ideally, both the Legionnaires and the Manavliatins could all throw their pilum kind of as they're charging in to soften up the enemy. I mean, that kind of was the idea, and why they got rid of that. They used to do it, I don't know, but them having two pole arms they can use is awkward. They're still very efficient killers. When I run my legions, I'd like to have about 2/3 Legionnaires and maybe about 1/3 of these Manavliatins because they add a lot of killing power to your infantry line. Here in the Legion, we have kind of a unique case where you can pick between ranged units, either crossbows or the Palatine Guard. The Palatine Guard is my choice typically, unless either I'm doing a playthrough where I'm trying to specialize in crossbowmen, or I think in fief defense, you can make a really good argument for the crossbowmen, and we'll get into both of them. What I love about the Palatine Guard, first off, his armor. He's pretty heavily armored for an archer. And remember, this armor really comes into play, and head armor, of course, when you're in that skirmishing phase where you're exchanging fire with the other faction trying to win that skirmish to either pull them out of position or just cause a lot of casualties. These guys are amazing at it because look right here, they have 140 bow skill. I mean, that's a crazy high bow skill. And on top of that, right here, they have one of the best bows for just standard archers. I mean, they're not Fian level, but for just a standard archer, 66 pierce is crazy high. I mean, the Aserai have 62? I think the Khazate archers have a 62 pierce. The Sturgian ones have something embarrassing like 56 or something. I mean, this is a very powerful bow on an archer. On top of that, they get 2 stacks of bodkin arrows. So 3 pierce arrows. These guys can shoot for days. One of the big drawbacks to the crossbowmen is that they don't carry that much ammo. Now, they make up for that with getting the shield, and we'll talk about them here in a second, but having 2 stacks of arrows allows your archers to do what they're supposed to do, which is win you that range skirmish phase and cause damage from range. You get your enemy stuck on a bridge, or you get a nice flank on them with your archers, and these guys are going to have the ammunition to bring that advantage home for you. They're an exceptional unit. On top of that, I mean, look here. The Legionnaire has 131 handed. Well, guess what this guy has? 131 handed with this Spatha. People say, well, it doesn't have a shield, and that's true, but let's be honest, the AI is pretty good about blocking these days. And at that 131 handed, these guys can actually hold their own in a fight. And yeah, it would be better if they had a shield, but by the time stuff gets to them, it's usually covered up in all these bodkin arrows. So it doesn't take much for them to top someone off. I mean, they've got 34 armor. The Manavliatin here has 33. So I'm sick and tired of people not giving the Palatine Guard his due. Everybody wants to talk about the Legionnaires and the Cataphracts, but this Palatine Guard is a badass, and these guys will carry battles for you. And when you talk about hammer and anvil tactics, you can use these guys as an anvil. You can flank with your Legionnaires and your cavalry and just use these guys. If anybody makes it to them, they hold their own. It makes me sick. These guys don't get more respect because they are sensational units. And you've got that little twirly goatee thing going on. and just melting butter with those eyes. He's perfect. The Imperial Bucellari. So unless you're determined to use these guys, don't. Just don't. These guys are just ridiculous, and they're a complete waste of a slot in the Legion. I mean, just the idea is crazy, right? This guy with horrible armor and an unarmored horse is going to roll out to go skirmish what? Crossbowmen, Javelcav, Kuzate horse archers. I mean, these guys get melted. They're LOL. Do not. Okay, their bow is good. They got 62 pierce. Their arrows suck, and they have that nice 140 bow skill. So at best, dismount them and put them in with your archers. That's the best thing you can do with these guys. But as horse archers, these are the least of these, and you're better off getting anything else than these guys. They're just not. They're just not. Now, with all my love for the Palatine Guard, you might think that I'm not such a big fan of the Sergeant Crossbowman, and you'd be absolutely right. First off, he doesn't have that great of armor compared to the Palatine Guard, so he's got 26 armor. The armor's decent. The other big drawback to Crossbowmen is, look, one stack of shots here. So after they shoot these 18 bolts, they're out of ammo, and now they're infantrymen. One unique thing about the Crossbowmen that, and what really kind of their saving grace, look over here. 131 handed, right? Same as the Palatine Guard, but he also comes with this shield, which just makes them better in combat and more defensive once they get into that melee fight. On top of that, look at this one-handed he's got here. Instead of that sword that just does the cut damage, which isn't super effective against armor, what do you see? Oh, we've got a mace, which is what? Blunt damage. Look at that, 60 swing damage. That's all blunt damage. These guys can actually dunk a bunch of armored infantry in one-on-one combat. I mean, they've got 130 skill, which is pretty standard across high-level infantry, and they do blunt damage. Where the Imperial Sergeant Crossbowman shines is in fief defense for a few reasons. First off, the ammo reduction doesn't matter because they get infinite ammo. Secondly, if the enemy does come up the walls and they happen to have to switch to melee mode, that blunt damage and that 130 skill makes them excellent infantrymen, and they can actually do very well against even armored infantry. The third thing about crossbowmen is their reload animation, where they have to bend over to pull up the crossbow, actually protects them from getting hit from other ranged fire as much. So I love to stuff these guys inside of my fiefs as I get them or as I recruit them. If I get a stack of prisoners, I'll just slowly recruit them. And as I swing by my castles or whatever, I'll drop them off in there and then swap out for some Palatine Guard. I love to have Palatine Guards in my field army, but when it comes to throwing things inside of my fief, these Imperial Sergeant Crossbowmen are great. But there are effective ways to use these guys in field battles, and one of them is you kind of let them shoot up their shots to win the skirmish phase and maybe keep a few shots in reserve. And then when everyone engages, you flank with these guys, have them shoot the rest of their shots into the sides or back of the enemy force, and then charge them in. And then they kind of morph into these extra infantry force that's flanking after they've softened up the enemy with their crossbow shots. So it's not the end of the world, and it can be kind of a fun playthrough to change it up. I still think the Imperial Palatine Guard is superior in field battles, but there's ways to use these guys that they become wildly effective. So definitely don't be discouraged from using them. And in fief defense, they are outstanding. So be sure if you get your hands on these guys or want to level up a few to throw in your castles, you will be very happy with how they perform. And on to the noble elite cataphract. I'm getting hot in the trousers just looking at them. Oh my God, these guys are incredible. What do we have here? We have a heavily armored. I mean, look at all this armor on this fella. Just a beast of a guy on top of a heavily armored noble mount, right? This huge amounts of armor just everywhere. These guys are absolute tanks. You can charge them directly into an infantry line. They don't give a damn. You throw that medicine perk on top of these guys and you have little demigods running around the battlefield. And on top of being amazingly armored and being able to take so much damage, look, he's got this courser lance with that 225 length. And when they have to switch to the one-handed, look at the length on that sword, 116, able to reach out there and touch what they're trying to hit, whether it's on the ground or on a mount. These guys are tanky. They're killers. They do whatever you need to do, and you will crush your opponents with these guys in battle. I mean, they will take out enemy cav. They will take out horse archers. They will take out whatever you send them at. The only thing that really, I think, counters them well, because their lance requires them to use it two-handed, so their shields on their back, is javelins. Javelins throwing into these guys tend to hit them in the chest. I mean, the arrows hit them and light them up, but with the shield on the back, it catches a lot of them, and then they're so heavily armored, they can take a few arrows. But the javelins flying into them, be careful sending them into a bunch of jav cav, because it seems to tear them up pretty good. But other than that, they fear nothing on the battlefield. They are to be feared. And once you see it all come together with these badass troops and their awesome looking armor, and your legionnaires and your manablitans are grinding up the enemy infantry while your palatine guards just rain death down upon your foes. And during that time, your badass cataphracts are busting through everything and lancing things down. You are absolutely going to fall in love with the Legion. I promise you. Okay, let's end on some battle tips here. And we're going to let these Valandians build up a nice little army before we go crush them. Okay, here we go. Well, let's let that 110 get there, and we'll take him down at 600. And then we'll leave that last 100. Oh, you know what? Let's just do it all. Let's just let them all get in there. That's fine. So 821 versus 428. Oh, well, I got an extra 21 here, so 449. Now remember, we're playing that commander playthrough, so let's just go ahead and do that. What I am going to do is I'm just going to get really offensive. Now, when it comes to fighting crossbowmen, remember, they do hit hard, but they don't have nearly the rate of fire that my bows do. See, my bows are going to outpace the damage dramatically. And I'm going to go ahead and send my cav into that pile of cav. And then on this flank, where this cav's going to come jumping in, I need to get them facing the right way. There we go. I'm going to put my infantry right here and put them in shield wall. Now, you'll see here comes the enemy, right, to attack me. And look at the damage. Look at the damage that my guys are doing versus the enemy army. Now, when you see them run out, what you want to do is you just kite your archers back, and then we're going to send the infantry in. I should have put them in line formation. And just kite your archers back, and then see how the enemy turns into my guys? Well, now I go ahead and step back up with my archers, and look, now they're shooting into the flanks. So I basically flanked the enemy without actually having to run my guys all over the battlefield. And then you just let the mayhem happen. And look, have I even taken a casualty yet? I don't know. But this is the power of that commander build. And you can see they're really getting it done. Sometimes it's nice just to come chill. Oh, get her, buddy. You're doing good. Oh, great job. Oh, what the fuck? You don't poke the Emperor, asshole. How do you not know? Who does that? What the hell? Now, you guys having a good time dying in these civil wars? That's what happens when you kill an emperor. Idiot. How do you not know that you don't hit the emperor? Oh, now look, my armor's all shit. What the hell? Oh, God. Just so frustrating, you know? But anyway, yeah, and so this is the commander build. You see, you just sit back, it's nice and chill, and you can see the power of this build. My guys are just, I mean, I have an elite army that's just on the juice. And see, you take it nice and easy and you just have some fun. And now you have been guided in the way of the Legion by the great Emperor Bogustus himself and his awesome Oklahoma Gang Legion. How honored you are indeed. It's time for you to go carve out your own empire. Have fun. Oklahoma out.